Hello and welcome to our review of Veronica Mars. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we are discussing the episode Nevermind the Buttocks. Teehee.
Hmm.
This episode originally aired April 18th, 2006, so let us start off with the number one film in America, Dave. Any idea what it could be? I'll give you a hint. It is a video game adaptation.
Oh, something like that around that time.
It's a weird time of the year to release this movie, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I'll give you another.
I think I vaguely remember. Again, I think it's just because the case that there's a re-release that I think is going to be happening with the series fairly soon now. But was it the case of the re-release of the live-action Silent Hill movie?
It was the Silent Hill movie.
Hmm.
Yes. Did you ever see the Silent Hill movie? Or any of them, I
I
should say?
don't believe so. Nothing that I can specifically remember aside from like the trailers for it.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw these either. Um, yeah. There's a legend.
because it's
Go ahead.
because in some cases I can somewhat understand, but also kind of the case of it was still kind of around the time of it was a very heavily loaded dice roll of how good a supposed movie like that could have been.
Yeah, so there's a new one coming out allegedly this year that's like a new movie that's based on Silent Hill 2. It's called
Mm.
Return to Silent Hill. So hopefully
Because it's a marvelous place to go to.
it is. Nothing bad ever happens in Silent Hill.
No, of course not. Why would you think?
Yeah. Hopefully that movie doesn't suck because, from what I've been told, the Silent Hill movies are not good. Let us move on then to number one song in America, and I'm not even going to ask you, Dave, because it's still Bad Day by Daniel Powter.
Hmm.
Alrighty, so we're going to move on to video games, which, there's some interesting stuff here. So, April 13th, if you had a PC, you could pick up Auto Assault.
Because the best supposed way in a vehicle is to supposedly assault particular peoples. Oh, okay, more of an online sort of thing.
It also looks like the most generic game ever.
Kind of sadly the typical thing that happens with those sorts of things.
Yeah, it doesn't look very good. Okay, April 17th, here's where a pretty big. I hesitate to call it a game, though, because I wouldn't. I don't think it's really a game. But April 17th, if you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up Brain Age, train your brain in minutes a day.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I can somewhat understand that. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's either still around or there's something that still sort of works with it because especially it was kind of one of the things that brought a lot of more mobile sort of games or simpler sort of games onto mobiling cell phones and other sorts of things like that.
Yeah, they did do like a sequel or two to Brain Age, but I don't think that Nintendo's released like an actual Brain Age in a while now.
Mm.
But it was certainly a thing. Although it we have experience with this game not being not always working so well,
Yeah, yeah. So
especially.
it's a question of whether or not it's mostly the technology at the time and or the thought of the particular games they used to put on there.
Yeah, well, I remember specifically like because you're supposed to. There's like one of the mini games you had to like say what you saw on the screen or something, and it was terrible at recognizing voices.
Yeah.
Blue, blue, blue. God damn it, blue.
Pineapple, and then it works.
All right. Also on April 17th, if you had a PC, also it came out the next day on Xbox, you could pick up a game called Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, which
Okay.
does not look familiar to me at all.
Like I vaguely recognize the box, but nothing that I've actually looked into.
Yeah, I don't recognize this at all, but it seems like it did fairly well, like review wise.
Hmm.
So, I don't know. Maybe it was pretty good. I don't know. April 18th, we've got a couple of pretty big releases here. If you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up Blades of Thunder 2.
Supposed yay?
It's like a combat flight simulator kind of helicopter game.
Okay. But also kind of the question of it's a flight monitor sort of thing on the DS,
Yeah,
where I somewhat understand, but also why?
don't know. April 18th as well, if you had an Xbox, you could pick up the King of Fighters Neo Wave, which,
Yes.
another entry in the King of Fighter series, which I've never really played.
Yeah.
Moving on, still on April 18th, if you had a PS2, you could pick up Tokyo Extreme Racer Drift, which was certainly a game that was released that I.
Like, somewhat understand. Again, either a case of just racing game, yeah, but also the case of, yeah, it only had the drifting mechanic to supposedly work with, but
This is the era, though, of like racing games being really popular.
nah, true,
Because
true.
when does Need for Speed Underground 2 come out? Because that's around this time, I think.
Hmm.
And that game blew up huge. Need for Speed. Oh, that's 2004. So this is, yeah, a couple of years after. So yeah, I can understand them trying to maybe pull into that market. Alrighty. Also on April 18th, if you had an Xbox 360, you could pick up Final Fantasy 11. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you play any Final Fantasy 11? This was one of the online ones, right?
yeah, with that one. No, case with this one. Never got around to doing any of the particular MMOs that around that time. Didn't have a rig that was strong enough for it.
Fair enough. As well, on April 18th, if you had a PS2 or PC, you could pick up Final Fantasy 11 Treasures of Out Yurhan? I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that, but it's some expansion to Final
Yeah, the
Fantasy 11.
marvelous thing where they decide to use different languages and make titles ridiculously hard to say.
Yes, so that was some expansion to Final Fantasy 11, and I am
Hmm.
not a Final Fantasy person, so yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
let us move on to the episode. Alrighty. So, we start off with Veronica being interrogated about the Aaron Eccles sex tapes. Keith tells Veronica that Kendall will receive life insurance on Beaver and Dick if they happen to die simultaneously. Mac tells Veronica that her cell phone interceptor has been confiscated and that she is using it to spy on Beaver, because she has now become a psycho ex-girlfriend.
Hmm.
Veronica finds Principal Clemens has changed his locks, and she approaches Butters to get her and Mac into the principal's office. Butter agrees as long as Mac goes to the prom with him. I'm sure no shenanigans will follow.
Hmm.
Veronica finds a cell phone interceptor as well as a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook from Weevil's locker. Veronica accuses Weevil of blowing up the bus. Harry Green approaches Veronica and asks her to track down the car that ran over his dog. Veronica is unable to find a matching car in Neptune, so she places an ad seeking information. Veronica tells Keith about Logan and Kendall's relationship, and Keith tells Veronica to find out whether they were together at the time of the bus crash. Gia approaches Veronica about the mystery car, telling her the car passed the limo right before the bus crash. Wallace makes a failed attempt to reunite with Jackie. Hector tells Weevil that the Fitzpatricks are abusing the former PCHers. Keith shows Veronica Kendall's high school yearbook, which proves that Kendall stole the identity of a classmate to hide a criminal past. Veronica meets the blind woman to whom the car belongs. Veronica sneaks into the garage and finds the remains of a Fitzpatrick sticker and several guns inside. Weevil talks to Veronica about the PCHer's mistreatment and believes that the list of numbers found in Thumper's locker are an insurance policy. Veronica agrees to help. Wallace meets Jackie at Java the Hutt, which I still love the name of, where she says she has a crush on him, but also that she has been accepted into the Pantheon Sorbonne University, meaning that they only have a few weeks before she leaves. Veronica tracks the car and becomes concerned a shooting is about to happen. She calls Keith for help, only to learn that she followed the green car to the same house Keith is in. Liam Fitzpatrick confronts Keith in Kendall's apartment. Liam threatens Keith before Keith fights back. Also, Liam attempts to shoot him, but the bullets aren't in his gun because Veronica took them out previously. Clever. Veronica and Keith successfully escape, with Keith swiping Kendall's hard drive. The Fitzpatricks are torturing a PCHer who is also Harry's brother. Weevil arrives and successfully threatens the Fitzpatricks with a list of their well-to-do clients. However, Weevil refuses to join the gang and says the PCHers are on their own. Veronica finds out that the owner of the car is Liam's grandmother. Eventually, Veronica and Keith deduce that Kendall could have caused the crash. Wallace and Jackie agree to start a relationship, and some new evidence surfaces in the Kane case, including some of Duncan's hair. Veronica finds out that Liam ran over Harry's dog to send a message, but Harry's brother tells him not to tell him so that he won't kill Liam. Veronica tells Harry that she didn't find the culprit. Alrighty, so what did you think of this episode, Mr. David?
Oh boy. Again, just with the couple things that have been happening with Veronica getting more information or getting vision sort of things about how things are going with the bus, things are building up with that. Just the case of previous things from episodes are starting to kind of come together, mix with other things, and supposedly cause a couple of more issues. Just a case of, oh boy, near the end of this season is going to be messy.
Yes, and we are rapidly approaching the end of this season. Because this is episode 19, and there's, I think, 22 this season. So we are very close to the end of the season. Okay, so in terms of significance, in this episode we find out that the Fitzpatricks are linked with Kendall, and Kendall has stolen her identity for a girl who died in a car crash. Logan confirms that Kendall was by herself at the time of the bus crash. Thumper's wooden paddle has carvings of license plate numbers of customers he was servicing. In addition, we have some new information about the Lily Kane plot resurfacing. Aaron's Oscar statue has been discovered in the backyard of the Kanes with some of Duncan's hair on it, although we do know that Aaron did recruit Kendall to get some of Duncan's hair, so we can at this point assume that he is attempting to frame him. Yes.
Yeah.
So, if there's nothing else about this episode, next week we'll be discussing the episode called Look Who's Stalking. It's a clever title.
Yeah.
So, in this episode, Gia is going to ask Veronica for help tracking someone who is stalking her. Meanwhile, Logan and Dick organize an alternative prom when the traditional one is canceled, and some things are going to happen between Logan and Veronica.
Oh, joy. Another marvelous case of that starting up again.
Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. Also, Veronica's going to get a medical diagnosis.
From an actual medical professional, I wonder?
Yes, an actual doctor.
Yes.
Which will raise some questions. Anyway, if there's nothing else, I've been Paul.
I've been Dave.